Good morning, Paul. It's Tuesday, the 28th of March. Here's the heads up brief for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 20 issues. North Asia, we covered 2 issues, and for the Australasia and Pacific Islands, we covered 5. In South Asia, we covered 18 issues, plus the major issues in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions.
Right, go ahead with the major briefing issues for me, thanks.
Great. In Thailand, the military is increasing security along the northern border with Myanmar. This is following a surge of drug trafficking and related crimes in Thailand's north and northeast. Thai officials also said ethnic armed organizations that operate just across the border in Myanmar are also involved in this criminality. Since 2021, there's been record drug busts in the region and increasing insecurity.
Yes, look, and I understand that criminality increase is also being fed by the special economic zone upon the northwest border of visit Cambodia, and fundamentally they're Chinese-controlled, criminal-involved syndicates, some nasty companies out of China. I beg your pardon, out of Hong Kong, China. Also with an Australian and a Thai director, and fundamentally it's the world's biggest meth lab, illegal wildlife, and all kinds of other nefarious activities secured in there and more or less sanctioned through naivety by the relevant government. But also a couple of the Myanmarese ethnic armed organisations are actually listed as narcos by the International Drug Agency. So that's going to continue, just kind of, it's been exacerbated by the situation in Myanmar, where the lack of governance from the military government or the junta basically means that nefarious activities have to increase. You've got the public defence forces of central Myanmar and all the ethnic armed organisations fundamentally fighting battles against an illegitimate government, and also a government like its democratic counterparts under Aung San Suu Kyi that can't actually govern. So it was from worse to worse. So thanks for bringing that to my attention, but I believe that will continue to escalate as much as the Thai authorities are doing their best. The reality is the nature of that terrain and jungle there, and the autonomous actions through their own ability to defend themselves means that they're going to continue to walk through that border unopposed. The Thai authorities will get some contact with the movements of the people, but fundamentally they might get 1% of it if they're lucky. But obviously it used to be predominantly heroin based on opium poppies, but it's so much easier to produce meth using the feeder chemicals without the need to grow fields which are highly visible. Okay, thanks for raising it to my attention, and expect that to escalate. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. In Papua, Indonesia, protests will be held tomorrow to demand that Israel be allowed to play the Under-20 FIFA World Cup. This is after authorities in other provinces have said that they won't allow Israel to play, and FIFA is reviewing whether it can hold the World Cup in Indonesia. Protesters will demand that the World Cup be held in Papua.
Yes, unfortunately, Papua is not going to get its way. Albeit Indonesia has 20-odd million Christians that aren't anti-Israel for religious reasons, though many of them are for political reasons. The reality is the central government of Indonesia is extremely unlikely to approve that. That would indicate some equal thinking amongst the government at the top, but it's unlikely for them. They'll continue to persecute Israel. Israel continue to persecute Palestine, and the Neanderthals of world thinking will continue to think like each other and condemn each other for thinking like that. Thank you.
In the Philippines, authorities announced yesterday that they arrested 3 suspected members of the Khalistan Tiger Force in Iloilo province on the 7th of March. The Khalistan Tiger Force is a Sikh separatist organization. This is the first time that Sikh separatists have been detected in the Philippines.
Okay, do we suspect they were there safe haven or training, or what is your theory on that?
I think it would be something along the safe haven lines because there have been activities of Sikh separatists in Malaysia. So it could be something along those lines, but authorities have not released more details thus far, but we will continue to monitor this closely.
Yeah, we need to start thinking about the various scenarios there, because it could be more sinister. They could be providing expertise. They could actually be trading in weapons and arms. They could be potentially garnering skills. So we need to continue to think about that, because depending on what their motivations of being there and their motives are, it will seriously change the impact of their presence. Thanks.
Right, Paul. Noted on that. In South Asia, 6 people were killed and several were injured in a suicide bombing near the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kabul yesterday. Now, this is the second attack here since January. The Islamic State of Khorasan province claimed the attack.
Okay, thank you.
In Pakistan, the Jamaat-e-Islami party will demonstrate against the provincial government across Khyber Pakhtunkhwa tomorrow. This is because of the inflation during the Ramadan period.
Okay, thanks.
In Nepal, authorities are on alert over the possibility of the Indian fugitive Amritpal Singh, who's the head of a pro-Palestine group, of him hiding in Nepal. India has asked Nepal to increase security and monitoring.
Okay, thanks.
In the Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions. So, Paul, there's a few developments connected to the Russia-Ukrainian conflict today. Moldova's defense ministry is hosting a military exercise with special force units from the US, the UK, and Romania until the 7th of April. The European Union warned Russia of sanctions if Russia deploys tactical nukes to Belarus. And the Dutch Prime Minister said that he is open to sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine.
Okay, this is very interesting because, look, I think all our listeners, be they clients or if they're just peripheral dudes that listen into our heads up, I think it's critical everybody understands the background. I mean, there's 2 very notable, impartial, non-biased American commentators. One is, I think it's Professor John Mearsheimer, and the other is a ex-Marine guy, Ritter, R-I-T-T-E-R. I can't remember his name, but Ritter focuses on the realities of the battle in the Ukraine from a military perspective, not twisted and perverted by Western media, and not he hasn't had his brain disengaged by towing the line of, following the other sheep, albeit the sheep they follow is very stupid. He talks in great details about the relevance of Bakhmut and how, from an operational perspective, Russia's losing a lot of people, but not as many as the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are running out of people. And so all these send Christmas presents to fight wars that you start on the other side of the world and ignore countries getting totally decimated. Their own power gains is very different, say, in the streets of London, Brussels and DC than it is to the streets in Ukraine. And obviously Romania, Moldova, Poland, they're all going to ultimately get dragged into this, as is Europe. Europe more so from the financial impacts of what they forced China and Russia to amalgamate economies and break away from the USD. So US is going to benefit greatly, though I'm not sure it's their original motive, but as the safe haven currencies flock to America, that'll help them out. The problem is the inversion of the bonds. It's going to have a massive impact. We're already seeing what impact that is. Banks in Europe investing in bonds in America, and their own bonds and American bonds, change of value and change of the feedback means that they're going to have horribly weak balance sheets, and Europe's going to feel the impacts of that ultimately, or fold on to Northeast Asia, they'll probably lag a year or two behind the carnage we're about to witness in Europe over the next 12 months from a financial perspective. But yeah, I encourage everybody to stop reading the Western media, seek out experts like Mearsheimer and Ritter, and understand it regardless of what you think now and whether you actually believe your government and politicians are out for the good of your country. And maybe it's time to look at Mearsheimer and Ritter and start to challenge if you're a part of the problem rather than a potential solution. Because the Western world, going back to 2014, under the wonderful leadership of America, has been inciting this war. They've got the war, they've got it for a specific agenda, and they're running that agenda in the name of world peace. And fortunately, there are a couple of brave voices in Mearsheimer and Ritter that can point out reality. Ritter's not going to talk about his political beliefs, he's just going to give you the tactical and operational reality. Mearsheimer certainly challenges the status quo of thinking and of what's occurring at that geopolitical level and why. Any other issues today? What about Netanyahu? How's he going on over there in Israel?
Right, Paul. It's pertinent that you brought that up. So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has temporarily suspended the controversial judicial reforms after very disruptive protests and strikes yesterday. So it seems the unions have called off the strikes for the moment.
Yeah, so in summary, Netanyahu pretends he's a wonderful leader, despite being on escaping charges for all kinds of corruption. But people still think he's a good guy because he talks the talk. But his own arrogance took him too far on this occasion where he tried to actually introduce absurd judicial reforms, which ultimately made him a dictator. So it's kind of ironic that America supports such a man like Netanyahu, but then actually condemns one like Putin, even though Putin said on many, many occasions, stop setting up existential threats on my border by NATO's expansion. America wouldn't tolerate superpowers deploying in its backyard, but it believes they should be able to deploy in other nations. So that the reality is they're doing it. They want to get them, they want to kill them and exterminate them while they're small, and they want to ignore every UN principle and do their own thing. It's a horrible travesty. Unfortunately, it's one that most Americans are blind to because they trust willy-nilly their politicians, and ultimately their politicians are in the back pocket of the banks, and the banks keep getting bailed out every time they screw up. All right, thanks a lot. Uday, great briefing. I know we've both got another meeting to get on to, so we better shake a leg, okay?
All right, thanks, Paul.